Does Spence pre-accident beat Crawford? No. Does he do better? Yes, because Spence pre-accident, in my opinion, this is speculation, has a better chin and a more durable body, and he definitely, verifiably has better balance and coordination. His hips look super stiff in fights since the accident, and his feet are more stuck in the mud, so he struggles with lateral movement even more so than he previously did, and he always struggled with lateral movement. His stiffness and balance are things that I brought up consistently in my analysis because these were just more reasons why I thought he would lose. These aren't excuses because I think he would lose regardless. Those reasons are minor compared to the main reason he lost: styles. So I'm going to talk about the sweet science behind this and then what the doctor had to say. So it's going to be two main parts. The first part is going to be about Spence pre-accident. The second part is going to be about more of Spence and Ugas situation and what the doctor had to say. The patterns that got him in trouble during this fight are the same patterns that he's been relying on his entire career. When Brook took away his jab, just like how Crawford did, he relied on ducking or momentum shifting forward off a level change to get inside. Crawford countered him and hurt him the most when he used that tool. So whenever he was level changing off a body jab, or he was level changing with a left hand to the body, or he was trying to duck inside with his head, that's when Crawford was hurting him the most. He was hurting him the most on the inside and tight mid-range. And if you look at the Lartey fight, he was rocked in an exchange with a tight mid-range / inside counter right hook.
In a round, Spence had dominated. Right at the close, Lartey hits him with a good hook.
Same stuff Crawford was hurting him with, and he dropped him with a right uppercut shovel hook. Watch my 3 videos covering that, where I go over Crawford, neutralize him in the clinch, doing all that, blah, blah, blah. Porter rocked him in tight range with a left hook in the exchange.
Getting breathing kind of heavy.
Oh, big left by Porter.
And Porter's not a power puncher, but it was the accuracy and the speed of the shot, and in that specific range where Porter hurt him, right? So Spence was more durable, but not less susceptible. If he's getting consistently caught with these shots, that accumulation of damage is just going to lead to the same outcome. It just will take more time. Brook was able to consistently hit him with big counters throughout the fight, even at the end when Brook was getting broken down. Brook is not the counterpuncher Crawford is, neither is Porter or Lartey. This fight would be more competitive, but end up looking the same after a while. There's a reason why experts, analysts, and boxers always picked Crawford to beat Spence, and that made a lot of Spence fans mad. Me seeing what I saw made me uncomfortable prior to the fight happening because I knew what was going to happen. I didn't expect this level of dominance, but I knew Crawford would likely KO him and neutralize a lot of his offense. It was a hard pill to swallow as a big Spence fan. It still is, and I don't like watching the highlights, but I put my integrity over my feelings, which is why I'm making this video despite me originally not wanting to and saying that I would not to my community. Now, on to the second part. If you don't want to give Bud the full credit for beating Errol Spence, I can understand that. It would be disingenuous and dishonest for anyone to say that this was a physically primed Errol Spence. He just was not. However, it would be just as disingenuous to act like Errol Spence all of a sudden as a completely different fighter after the fact, particularly if you were one of the people who picked him to win before the fact. Errol Spence was still a world-class fighter after the accident. People picked him to win because he was still a world-class fighter. He proved that twice after long layoffs, injuries, and the car crash that he could beat Danny Garcia cleanly and that he could beat Ugas decisively. Now those performances that were proof of his greatness are now being used as proof of his ineptitude. That's what I mean by disingenuous. So there's 2 important parts to this. One is the idea that Spence, the Spence that showed up versus Crawford was worse than the Spence that showed up versus Ugas. We're going to look at that. I implore you to look at Errol Spence in the first rounds of the Ugas and Garcia fights and then compare them to this version of Spence and tell me what you see. This Spence has a quicker, snappier jab and cleaner punches in general. His left hook looks slow at times, but it's just like the Ugas and Garcia fight. I could point out moments like this. That left hook looked horrible, didn't it? Or for a counter argument, I could say that left hook looks slow and bad as well. Both look slow, but he doesn't throw all of his shots at the same speed. Almost no one does. Him throwing close to full speed looks like this. That doesn't look that slow, does it? It looks pretty fast. him throwing a faster version of the same combination versus Ugas that he did in the first clip versus Ugas. That one wasn't as slow as the first one. It still didn't look as good as in the Crawford fight, which is kind of what I mean. To me, he looked better in the Crawford fight. But other than a few faster straight punches, which straight punches are going to be faster, he definitely looks sluggish in the Ugas fight. To me, he looks even worse than in the Crawford fight. That's my opinion. All of this is just to shut down the narrative that Spence was somehow worse. I focus on the first rounds because Errol Spence isn't discouraged at that point, so he still looks like himself as far as his behavior. He's coming forward, he looks like Errol Spence, and he's acting like Errol Spence. It's only when Crawford really hurts him that he starts getting a little bit hectic and hesitant. Both of those things in combination can make your punches look a little bit weird. And obviously make his behavior look a little bit weird. Now onto another one of the many narratives inside of this, how people always say he looks sleepy, he looks high, this and that. If you I've got questioned how many of these people know who Errol Spence is or watch him or listen to his interviews or anything like that. He always looks weird, and he always looks like he's about to fall asleep before fights in the past, before and after the accident. That's his personality, that's his face. If you look at the Ugas fight, he looked like in the middle of him fighting, his eyes look like they gonna close, and you see him in the corner, he just like that's how he looks. I don't know what to say. Speaking of his face, people talk about speech patterns. His jaw structure is completely different due to him losing teeth compared to pre-accident Spence. If you look at his jaw, it looks way different, and obviously his teeth is completely different because he had veneers. But jaw structure and losing teeth definitely affect the way you speak in a substantial way. And if you look at any version of Spence in his interviews, when he's bored or calm, he talks really slow and he slurs his words. And he's like, oh, definitely, yeah, all of that. But when he's amped up or talking trash, he's very clear and witty. Look at him talking trash to Sean Porter, and then look at him talking trash to Bud Crawford. It's the same type of energy. Come on now, stop playing. Now, on to the doctor, the thing that got this all trending. I can't substantially argue against the authority of a doctor, even if I had brought out evidence. Me having, and this is on the topic of the brain injury he could possibly have from the car crash, me having to lay out all the groundwork to combat just the pure authority he's bringing to the subject isn't worth it, and even if I do, I still might be wrong. What I can do is not focus on the science, but focus on the sweet science. That was the purpose of this video. The doctor said he doesn't know who will win between Prime Spence and Crawford, but if you know what you're looking at, then you know who will win. Now, if you're one of the people who's hell bent on spreading this narrative, ask yourself why. What's the purpose of pointing out all these signs from before the fight after the outcome? If it's about Spence's health, the public did a pretty bad job of taking care of him because all of the evidence is available before. People said they don't want to discredit Crawford, but then they bring up the fact Spence isn't 100%. Whether or not you intend to, the consequences of the action remain the same. Taking away credit, and like I said earlier, that's fine. And I'll explain why. It makes sense to take away credit because this Spence is not the best version of Spence we've seen. So Crawford should not get full credit for beating this Spence because it's not a full Spence. But this Errol Spence also went out to beat two world-class fighters with all of the same things holding them back that we're using as an excuse now. So on a final note, just to clear that up, Crawford should not get full credit for beating a prime Errol Spence, but he should get full credit for beating a world-class version of Errol Spence who was still the unified champ and went out and beat two top guys. That's the whole point. And here's the ending discussion. I do worry for Spence's health, and I agree with the doctor that if he's not showing signs of better brain health, then he should not be fighting. But as a warrior, I know he wants another opportunity. However, he definitely should not fight Crawford again. To me, he will have to fight some opposition at 154 to see where his health is at and run tests prior and after the matchup. Extensive tests and scans. If he doesn't look anywhere near as durable, retire, because health comes first. Simply put, Crawford deserves credit for making a world-class fighter look so bad that people go back on their word. A fighter with all the same things holding him back in two world-class fights, which he won cleanly. Is this the best version of Spence? No, but this Crawford, But does Crawford deserve credit for being a damn good fighter? Yes. End of story. On to the next, which is going to be me talking about the fantasy fight between Floyd and Crawford, because a lot of people want that. Some channels beat me to it, but I'm going to give my take regardless. And then finally, I'll just say, if you agree with me, like and share. If you don't agree with me, tell me why. Immortality Serum out.
How can I die if I'm immortal? Monster in my eyes, I'm immoral. I ain't got no time to be cordial. Ripping up shit, I'm making big decisions. I'm feeling fire in the